Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Deep Dive into the Archive. In this episode, we'll be taking a deep dive into You Won't Get What You Want by Daughters.
This is the band's fourth studio album, coming after a long hiatus. They had been thought to be broken up. Actually, they did break up, and then they got back together. It's very, very cute in the way that Daughters is cute.
Man, this is a really cute album. This is what I'd describe this as. If any of you are looking for a cute, pleasant album to put on while you take a Sunday stroll, this is it. This is what you're looking for.
This is the one. But coming out in late 2018, this is a departure stylistically from the band's previous work, which was far more aggressive.
I don't think it's a complete departure, because there's still a lot of really aggressive stuff on this record.
You can definitely see like the makings of this record in like Daughters' self-titled album. There's some big differences in the band's style as well.
I mean, you should also say definitely check out their self-titled album too. Their self-titled is really fantastic. Super creative noise rock record. Really wild, really out there. That record was kind of like, at the time, like the culmination of their previous two albums. It kind of felt like they were building up to that record. And I think that was like legitimately a great record for them to have broken up after. They really outdid themselves with You Won't Get What You Want. It's really impressive to me how much better You Won't Get What You Want is compared to their previous stuff. I think their previous stuff is like amazing. Whereas I'd say their previous work, initially it was mathcore, and then it evolved into more like noise rock with, I guess, a little bit of mathcore influence. This record, it's still noise rock, but it feels, I'd say, much more avant-garde in a lot of ways.
It's noise rock, but there's quite a bit of industrial rock here as well, and also a lot of no wave to create the soundscapes that they're working with across the album.
I'd also say, like, there's probably a bit of ambient in here on songs like Less Sex and also sort of City Song. To describe the record, this album is like a psychological horror movie in album form. I would describe it as a mental breakdown.
Yeah, this breakdown kind of starts with the intro, City Song, which is a very atmospheric opener to the album. Very like foreboding introduction. This world.
This song and every other song on the record, I'd say, has this very oppressive feel to it. It kind of just like surrounds you with this super, I wouldn't say aggressive, but it's this very like harsh, almost like anxiety inducing like synth tone that just like plays as you have these snare drum hits. They sound almost like gunshots. They're so like sudden and vivid. As you have Alexis Marshall, their lead singer, you have his vocals that are just so unique. A lot of what he does is almost like talk rhythmically in a way. I wouldn't describe this album as spoken word. It's really hard to describe his vocals without just like playing them, because they're so interesting to listen to in how he has such a unique voice and delivery that like basically no other artist sounds like.
I really like how this song starts, and there's this kind of emptiness in the beginning. Alexis Marshall has this very languid vocal delivery, and how that picks up in sort of the second half of the track into the very overpowering noise, shrieks in the background, and kind of madness that swells up everywhere.
You also have like these lyrics that Alexis sings throughout are really like haunting and like off-putting. The city is an empty glass, words do nothing, no one sleeps, the city is an empty glass, and these phrases just keep repeating and changing throughout. It just gives, again, just such an oppressive feel to this track, and it really is a great job of setting up the rest of the album. And then also, towards the end of the song, you have this moment where everything cuts out, and you have I like to call it like the space synth. You have like a synth that like rapidly changes notes, and then it cuts out and you just get these crushing guitars that sound so unhinged and like mechanical almost. It's really amazing.
I want to say, so I know you've been saying synth.
Is it just a guitar?
It's just a guitar with like effect pedals. I know we went to the live show, and the live show they were using a synth. But that was just to create like layering, I think. If you look in the credits, there's no synth.
Okay. So it's just a guitar.
Like Sadler is credited with production, but there's no specific synth. It's just Marshall on vocals, John Syverson on drums, Sadler on guitar, and Samuel Walker on bass guitar. That's pretty much the only instrument credits.
So then after this amazing introduction with City Song, we get to Long Road No Turns, which is just this like anxiety-inducing track. The entire track creates this feeling of like a car crash that's inevitable.
The song's essentially about how everybody is right on the edge of madness and we're all bursting at the seams, ready to come apart. Perhaps our narrator already has.
Yeah. I love Alexis's delivery. It's so like manic, really like desperate sounding throughout the track. These like wailing guitars like continually like build throughout and just create this like unsettling, oppressive atmosphere that's really fantastic.
I especially love on this track this pummeling high compression percussion you have going throughout. The instrumentation on like this entire record is great, and the guitars get a lot of credit. I just want to point out like the drums.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. So good on every track.
They're just insanely hummeling, unrelenting. They feel like ever present throughout a lot of the tracks. And then after Long Road No Turns, we get Satan in the Wait. This is the first teaser track for this album. I love the like super sharp sounding guitars on this track. They pierce your eardrums and create a very unsettling feeling. And especially the chorus comes in on this track. It's almost like a bit of relief because the chorus feels very calm compared to the rest of the track. Much more melodic.
Yeah, the chorus feels very optimistic, and you're let down by this outro. I absolutely love the outro of this song. Everything comes together. The production on this track especially just sounds incredible. On the outro you have like these like ethereal guitars, and they're layered over these like chugging noisy bass riffs, and Marshall is just screaming, crying out, and it creates such a great sound. Sounds great.
Especially the lyrics on this track also just create this feeling of like, again, this like inevitable like collapse. On the outro, Marshall sings like, this world is opening up. Today's gonna feel like tomorrow today. Very ominous lyrics, like something bad is gonna happen. And then after Satan the Wait, we just go straight into The Flammable Man, which is probably one of the most aggressive tracks on the record. It's super panicked sounding, which I love. It just has this intense burst of energy. It feels so sudden and like unrestrained. It kicks up this feeling of like paranoia throughout the record.
I really love the guitars on this track. The guitars feel like insanity because they're just scrambling all over the place. And you go into the bridge and you get this just raw noise. I love their use of harsher noises on this album.
And right after that, we get another insane sounding track, The Lord's Song. Oh man, there's such an energy to this track. I love Alexis's super animated delivery. This track has like a feeling of despair to it, thanks to the lyrics on it, which seemingly the narrator feels like basically God doesn't care about him or anything. Basically, you have the lyric, the sampled voice of God singing cry, cry on, cry on. Very, very depressing. Gives this like great overwhelming and like overbearing sense of like just despair, essentially.
I really love the chorus on this song. This is probably like one of my favorite choruses on the album. It sticks in your head, and it is kind of depressing and kind of mad in a way, but it's really, really cool. And the way the guitars are backing the chorus is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, after the Lord's Song, we get Less Sex. It's a nice come down, a very low energy track, but it has, again, this like very ominous feel to it. The instrumentation like pulses on this track, and I love the lyrics saying, I let it into my home, I let it into my home, let a long way down, let a long way down. This like despair that is affecting the narrator, it's like insidious in some way. Once he's let it in, he can't get out of it. It's a great track.
I kind of find it funny how this track is more mellow than previous tracks, but also more noisy at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. They do a great job of like building up the instrumentation throughout.
Yeah, there's these bursts of sound between the lyric, and then it all combines on the outro.
I think that's definitely something that's pretty consistent in this album, is they create just these walls of noise that are just really amazing to hear.
I don't know if we want to talk about too much about our interpretations of what exactly is being let in. There are a couple.
I know a lot of people have said that it's about, like, drug use or addiction in some way, but to me, it feels like within the context of the record, it's more this sense of despair that he has, this overwhelming feeling of, like, dread, I guess. He let in these, like, feelings of dread and despair, and now there's no way for him to get out of this, like, inevitable breakdown he's having.
It's a good interpretation. I think it's about drugs. No, it like, the lyrics on this track really remind me of Needles by System of a Down. I think because I draw that comparison.
Then, after Less Sex, we get the song Daughter, which I feel like was probably one of my lesser favorite tracks previously, but, like, listening through the album again and reading through, like, the lyrics and everything, I think it really made me appreciate this song more. It has such dark lyrics that are, like, incredibly poetic. Especially the lyric, "There's a sure rope swinging without a head in its jaws, it's waiting." I don't know, that just, like, really sticks with me. This just, like, overwhelming feeling of, like, depression and this, like, suicidal desire that the narrator has at this point is just super dark, and I think is really fantastic.
This is probably one of the more metaphorical tracks on the album. There's a couple ways to interpret it. I kind of see it as a being about, like, struggling with mental health and depression. The sure rope swinging, I feel, is a noose. But also it kind of touches on how he kind of feels like everybody in the world around him is kind of indifferent to it. And it's like, oh yeah, it happens. Nobody's doing anything about it. They're all kind of indifferent, which is even more depressing. I really love the, like, echoing guitar chords on this track. I think they sound absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, this is, like, a very bassy track, I'd say. This is probably the grooviest track on the record. The way they use the bass guitar especially gives it this like, all-encompassing, overwhelming feeling that just, like, surrounds you as you listen to it. It's definitely a very, like, despair-filled track. I love the ending, especially with Alexis's vocals repeating the line, knowing they'll die here or there, over and over again, as, like, all the instrumentation fades out. And then we get to The Reason They Hate Me. This track, it sounds like it's stabbing you. That's what the track sounds like, and I love it. Like, the guitars are so insanely, like, sharp sounding and distorted. Alexis's, like, again, manic delivery on this track is so incredible and frightening almost.
It feels kind of like a burst of emotion, like he's lashing out at the people around him.
That definitely is also reinforced by the lyrics, which I love. They're very, like, sarcastic and almost passive-aggressive. Like the opening to the chorus where he says, "Maybe the sun waits for you to be shown what to do." At this point, he's, like, very fed up with being bossed around and told what to do and being in an environment that doesn't really, like, care about him.
Critique on the abuse of critique, as Marshall said. Then we get to my favorite song.
Ocean Song. Yeah, this is, like, the only story track on the album, I'd say.
Kind of, yeah. This is the only one where we have, like, a definite main character. His name's Paul. He's a pretty cool guy. He goes insane.
He drives a truck. I don't think they mentioned what he drives. So.
He just drives. I love, the line, "the ignition births the keys into his hand." Fucking love that line so goddamn much. It's so good. It's like, that's, like, the kind of shit, like, a famous writer wishes he wrote, I feel.
Oh man, yeah, the poetry on this track is, like, really beautiful, and I want to say maddening. It's very, like, I guess maddening is the word. Like, it creates this, like, feeling of going mad, you know? Lines like, "He opens the door, the world's suddenly different, he senses something terrible waiting, a loose thread, a worsening." It so clearly paints a picture of someone who just, like, snaps from seemingly, like, the monotony of his life. Like, you have the intro to verse 2 that goes, "Across the loose brick he prepares himself for the evening greeting, but his inability to shake the warning sees him grinding his teeth." Like, he just can't face, like, his life anymore. He needs to, like, escape from what it is. It's so beautifully put. I don't know how to describe the guitars because they're so sharp and like desperate sounding.
Also, I really love the drums on this track, how they feel like walking and then they pick up and it feels like running almost.
This track is kind of repetitive. I think that works really well with this kind of idea that Paul is like, he's breaking because, again, of his like repetitive, boring life. And he just feels this need to get out of it. And that repetition, especially with the drums, as I kind of like continue to pound on your eardrums, it creates such a great feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
Great, yeah.
I feel great when I listen to this song. I also really love the outro, the repeating phrase, to know, to see for himself, there's an ocean beyond the waves, where you don't really get the final ending to the story. You don't know if there's an ocean beyond the waves. You just see Paul searching for it. One day, maybe he'll find it.
Finally, in the record, we get to Guest House, which is, I mean, it's my personal favorite track. I think it's like the perfect close to this record. It kind of feels like this culmination of a lot of the previous tracks, all of like the anxiety and like despair that's expressed in those tracks, as you just get essentially a track where the narrator is just trying to like seemingly get away from everything. Like he's desperately trying to find a way out, but he can't escape it. I love how desperate Alexis sounds on this track, especially when he gets to lines like, I've been knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking. There's just a desperation to him, to his vocals. It just creates such amazing like picture of this like super desperate situation that he's in. It just is I think it's a fantastic close. I especially love the use of horns at the very end that are just these very dark and rich sounding horns, and they just play the track and the album out. It leaves off on like the perfect note.
This track just sounds overall great. Like you said, Marshall's vocals on this track, absolutely fantastic. And his vocal delivery throughout the album is just incredible. He always kind of has like the perfect tone of voice for every situation. The Guest House here seems to be sort of a representative of like a safe haven from the insanity that's been gripping him. He's unable to find that reprieve. Just keeps going mad.
I feel like this is the only album that really captures this like feeling of like a mental breakdown, of just like losing it. I should also mention I love flow of the album. I think it flows incredibly well. It constantly keeps you interested because it keeps kind of changing things up with like, you know, the pace of the songs and the sound. Yeah, I don't know. I just think this album is kind of unmatched by any other album that tries to approach the feeling that it conveys.
Yeah, definitely the way this album really tries to get that feeling of like oppressive madness across, I think is very unique. There's lots and lots of music out there, but Daughters, You Won't Get What You Want is really a very unique record at the end of the day. Everything works. The instrumentation works, vocals work, lyrics work, all works together incredibly well, creates a beautiful and seamless listening experience. It's really a complete album. It's a perfect album, some would even say. Some like myself might give this album a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'd also give this album a 10 out of 10. It's just one of the most unique and engaging albums, not only of the past decade, but easily of all time. Incredible work of art. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Deep Dive into the Archive. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. Also, leave your thoughts about the album in the comments below. You can also check out more episodes of Deep Dive into the Archive on our channel, and also check out Album Swap, our other series. I hope you have a good day.